Next, we have House File 2063, Representative Schultz. As you are not a member of the committee, I will move your bill, House File 2063, to come before the committee. And I believe, Representative Schultz, you have an oral amendment that you'd like to engross. Mr. Colby, Ms. Sullivan, if you could, just take the testifier table so we can make sure that we have it properly formatted. So as that's happening, Representative Schultz, if you would like to explain, I'm giving him time to get there, explain your oral amendment. There he is.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just quickly note that in bringing this bill before the body, we identified a few key, I'm going to call them technical issues that we can just quickly fix on the fly that would get this bill in the shape that would work best for its full implementation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Would you like to describe where we're doing that, and we'll have Mr. Sullivan corroborate that we can engross those into the bill?
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Chair. On lines 1.10, after it says, so 215 men were killed or injured. We're going to add or injured following the word killed. And then on line 1.17, we are going to delete after fly the Minnesota Historical Society and insert a before replica.
Mr. Sullivan, if you could make sure that we have those properly engrossed.
Mr. Chair and members, yes, those changes will properly engross. The changes again are page 1, line 10, before the first period, insert or injured. And on page 1, line 17, delete the Minnesota Historical Societies and insert a.
Very good. Members, any questions to the oral amendment? Okay, this is to put the bill in the shape that the author would like. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, that oral amendment is adopted. Representative Schultz, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We stand in Minnesota on the history and the legacy of the people who came before us. And even just this morning, I was greeted by someone who gets to work in these halls representing union folks who came to me and said, generations ago in their family, there was a member of their family who lies here in St. Paul and served in the 1st Minnesota. And the 1st Minnesota Volunteer Infantry saved the Union, the Battle of Gettysburg. And so today we have an opportunity to continue to support that legacy by honoring them with July 2nd being officially named 1st Minnesota Day, and providing that the governor would issue a proclamation to honor this observance, and to encourage schools across our state to have instruction and curriculum that will ensure that future generations of Minnesotans understand the relevance of the service of the 1st Minnesota, and to have a replica of the flag of the 1st Minnesota Regiment flown over the state capitol on July 2nd of every year on the north flagpole of the Minnesota State Capitol. So with that, that is what the bill does, Mr. Chair. But today, I brought with me Major Olson, who is also has a master's in military history and a focus on the American Civil War, to explain the relevance of the 1st Minnesota.
Representative Olson, welcome to the committee. And I will say, while we both share a great, deep, and abiding love for the Civil War history, brevity is always at a premium.
Chair Nash always does that to me, always does that. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I think it's important to understand that the Battle of Gettysburg was the culminating event of the American Civil War, and what the 1st Minnesota did on the second day of battle was what saved the United States during that battle. I don't think you can press upon that enough. You hear from the movie Gettysburg, if you've ever seen it, you see that a lot of focus is placed on the 20th Maine, right? They were on the little round top on the far left of the battle, and everyone says that their charge down the hill kept Longstreet's men from rolling them up and moving forward. But what would have happened had the Union caved on that far flank? They probably would have just withdrawn and fallen back, and the entire army would not have been destroyed. But what the 1st Minnesota did in the center of the line was to prevent the Confederacy from breaking our entire line in half. Now, what happens when your line is broken in half? The enemy is then able to roll you up on both sides, and what we saw during the Battle of Chickamauga, had it not been for George Thomas, the Rock of Chickamauga, the entire Union Army could have been destroyed at that battle. But instead, he held firm and was able to reconstitute his army and save the day there. But had the Union not plugged the line with the 1st Minnesota, had 262 men not decided to charge into 1,200 Alabamans to buy 5 more minutes, had that not happened, there is a great chance that the Confederacy would have broken the lines there on the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg and at least destroyed half of the Union Army, at least half, depending on which way they would have rolled it up. So it is very important that we understand the sacrifice that was made. There's only one other unit in history, in American history, that has lost more or a higher percentage of casualties in one day. So we lost 83% casualties in that charge. 262 men charged into battle, 47 came out unscathed. 83% casualties. That's the second highest of any American unit in all of history. So their sacrifice, their willingness to go forth and save the Union, knowing what was going to happen, for those of you who know math well enough, 262 versus 1,200, those are not good odds. They fixed their bayonets, they charged, and they saved the state of Minnesota, they saved the Union, and they deserve our honor and recognition today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Olson. We will then have Mr. Kelleher. Mr. Kelleher, as you know, please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm David Kelleher from the Minnesota Historical Society. I cannot top that. I just wanted to add a few words of how we would implement this. And it's fine. There are a number of days of recognition in state statute. But if we don't do something about it, and as the bill suggests, teach school children about the importance of this, then it doesn't make a huge difference. Mr. Chair, the good news is that we have some tools in the toolbox already to help educators and school kids understand this. And Mr. Chair, you're going to say, yep, he's got the book again.
I knew you would.
And I do. And the reason I do is because Northern Lights, which we talked about last week as the curriculum for 6th graders to learn about Minnesota studies, Minnesota history, has a whole chapter on the Civil War. Students may learn about the Civil War in their U.S. history class, but they also will learn about it in their Minnesota studies class. And there's a specific section where students can learn about Charlie Goddard, who was a very, very young member of the 1st Minnesota, and they can learn through primary source documents about his experience in the Civil War and the Battle of Gettysburg. So the bill calls for us to, all of us, to recognize the 1st Minnesota and educators to work to make sure that there's understanding. There are many other ways. Our online encyclopedia, Minipedia, has a section on the 1st Minnesota, and of course, the source of information about the 1st Minnesota is Richard Moe, who's a Minnesotan who became the head of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. His book is the source of information on the 1st Minnesota. So lots of resources, and it's a really, really important topic, and thank you, Representative Schultz, for bringing it to everyone's attention.
Thank you, Mr. Kelleher, and I'll take great joy in pointing out that Representative Olson failed to point out that the very building that we are in is an homage or testament to what happened with the 1st Minnesota in the Civil War. So he's shaking his head at me, recognizing that had he been given more time, he probably would have gotten there. But it is a very important topic, and I do think school children across the state of Minnesota really need to know these things, because history does matter, and I believe everybody should have gotten their History Matters button. But history does matter, and this is an intensely important topic. So Representative Schultz, we'll go to member questions for you. Any member questions? Once, twice, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And there must have been something about that movie Gettysburg, because it sounds like it meant a lot to both Representative Olson and myself. And since he and I are like only a month or two apart in age, it was critical to my own understanding of Minnesota's role in this history. I grew up watching, that was my single favorite movie growing up, was watching Gettysburg. And at age 9, it was the first time that I had the chance to travel to Gettysburg to see the stories and the history, not just of Minnesotans, but of every American who helped save the Union during that 3-day battle. And so I very much appreciate the chance to have this bill before the committee, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, Representative Schultz. For those that saw the movie but didn't read the book, it's Killer Angels by Shara, and it's a very excellent read. So I will, with that, House File 2063 is laid over for possible inclusion. Thank you all.